on King Street and North Road in Georgetown, Guyana. We are here because we had an earlier interview, and it was so interesting that we decided to really steal some more time from Mr. Nagamutu's busy schedule. And he was so kind enough to offer us this opportunity, and I think ITV viewers will be very happy. So please join me on behalf of our camera crew led by Mr. Ramnarayan, Dairam and Tony in welcoming Mr. Moses Nagamutu once again to the program Inside Guyana to ITV studio. Sir, we are very happy to have you.
Thank you again.
Can you
Rory.
please tell us, why are you not the president of Guyana?
They got something here in Guyana law called the treason law. So the country has room for one president. You can't have two. And we do have one president, President Bar Jagdeo. So anything as to why I'm not president, I may be qualified, I might merit to be president, but you can't have two presidents at the same time.
So you're not sure you're qualified? I think
No,
I
the question is, we had an election, and by an overwhelming majority, the people have made a choice. We put Bar Jagdeo up as our presidential candidate of the PPP.
When you say we, what do you mean?
The PPP.
Okay.
The PPP
Okay.
choose its own presidential candidate. And he is a candidate I supported, I endorse. In fact, even if we had not had, I will say this for the first time, you know, I had some difficulties with the party in where I was removed from the leadership. I was in the Central Committee and the Executive Committee for 28 years.
Yeah, but I see your photograph. Look, you have Dr. Cherry Jagan's photograph right up there. You have another photograph up there with Mrs. Jagan. And you have even Mr. Jagdeo's photograph in your office.
Sure.
And what
Sure.
happened?
Now, these are my icons, my guru.
Oh, so Mr. Jagdeo is your guru.
Political guru was Dr. Cherry Jagan. Okay. Mrs. Jagan is I consider the matriarch of Guyanese politics. And Bar Jagdeo has been a colleague of mine who has elevated himself. I don't blame him for being president of Guyana. I don't blame him at all.
Are you blaming him for you not being
I can't blame him for me not being president.
A minister, I mean.
I would say this, that I would have expected that he would have used his discretion otherwise. It was his discretion to include or exclude me from the cabinet. And I'm disappointed at the exercise of his discretion. But he is president. If there is a culture whereby the president appoints the cabinet, then he is sticking within that culture.
But there are principles.
Well, I don't know all of what the president would take into consideration in putting his cabinet together. But I will say that the exclusion, my exclusion from the cabinet, is very, I would say, spectacular. You would not have expected that. So you would have had to have very good reasons for doing that.
But couldn't you have complained to your colleague and for many years co-worker, Mrs. Janet Jagan, complain to her so that he can put some pressure on him to probably give you some
you see, there's something called political ethos and political morality. In my life, I have not asked anyone favors. I might have granted people favors. But even now as a lawyer, I don't even know how to charge fees. Some people come and I laugh, and I said, just before you came here, they will call me Uncle Moses, Comrade Moses, and then I will tell some of them, I said, well, they'll say, well, how much is your fees? I said, well, look, forget the fees, but we don't refuse a donation. Well, I'm not saying this is for everybody. There are cases in which you have to charge your fees. I have an office to run, a very big office. But as I said, I do not believe in the politics of incestuous relationship, that I have to know somebody in order to get something done. I believe in a system of meritocracy. You must merit it. And if my colleagues feel that Nagamutu merited a position, they should give it without reservation. So I have not spoken to anyone, lobbied anyone. I don't think I cared to do that, to support me or to offer me a position.
But are you saying that all your colleagues in the PPP actually concocted your exclusion from the cabinet?
Well, if I am excluded, I would want to say that it probably was from the lack of support in the leadership. I am not sure there aren't many people in the leadership of this party who have the greatest regard for me and for the struggles I've gone through. I've known people from time to time, even the general secretary of the party, who would say, Mo, look at all the writings you did. Why don't you put them all together in a book? Because I have done a lot of writing in critical times on critical issues. And there are people in the party leadership who also have tremendous admiration for me, because very seldom do you have someone who single-mindedly would leave his home and his family. And I'm talking now about my parents. I left my family's home at the age of 14, and I have never turned back. And gave 45 years of non-stop political fight for the good cause. They are full of admiration of me because of that. And I could have stood up to Burnham, almost looking the monster in the eyes. And I've never known fear. I have never stood back. I have never withdrawn. All I knew was like a juggernaut. It almost sounds like your name, Jadoopat.
Jadoopat.
A juggernaut is someone that goes forward irrespective of the consequences. So, sure, there are people in the leadership who would have supported me. But there might have been constraints on this occasion. And I would give them the benefit of the discussion because I was not there. But I wouldn't say that I didn't receive support from my colleagues. I have not probably received the unanimous support of everyone. They might not have fought as hard as I would have expected them to fight on whether I should have a role to play or I shouldn't have a role to play. But that is a decision that has been made. So I can't really blame anyone. I'm not in the habit of involving myself in the blame game. They have an explanation to give, and time will tell. They say, what goes around comes around.
Well, my experience is very, very...
There's another election, and there's going to be another election. So we will not judge people on the basis of how they distribute offices. I would prefer to know that the sum total of their decision would find justification in the better delivery of services by the government. If this government delivers everything it ought to deliver in keeping with the manifesto promises we made to the people, then it doesn't matter whether Nagamutu isn't there. What is interesting to all of us, or ought to be interesting to all of us, is that we have a better government and it works harder for them.
Mr. Nagamutu, in our previous interview, you mentioned the phrase, things happened. And you also said that you desired or requested the position of Minister of Home Affairs. Do you think you would have been a better Minister of Home Affairs than the current Minister, Clement Rohi, your colleague?
Clement Rohi and I grew up in struggles. We were incubated in struggles. In the PYO and in the party. We traveled abroad extensively, and I can say that he has been one of the keenest students of revolutionary politics in Guyana and abroad. I believe very sincerely that Rohi, as a self-educated, self-taught person, has shown a good example of what it is to develop oneself. I know he's committed to the struggle. I know that he has his heart full of love for Guyana. And I believe that any portfolio that would be given to Rohi or has been given to Rohi, that he would discharge it to the best of his ability. I don't think it's a question of comparing one person with another. It's a question whether we feel that having been placed there, that he would do a good job. And I have confidence that he would do a good job.
So you no longer desire that position?
It's not a question of desire. It's a question of the person in there. I have made a public statement that there's tremendous potential in the cabinet, and I am committed to working with this cabinet, to supporting whoever wants me to support him or her. I have, right now on my desk, I have draft laws by ministers. They're asking me to look the laws over. I've committed myself to help all the ministers who want my help.
So are you getting some contracts from the government to revise the laws or help in the parliamentary constitutional reform process?
No, not really. Since I became an attorney, I've hardly had any job from the government. Maybe they think I'm not too bright, I'm not too experienced, I'm not too forceful.
But they're your colleagues and they should know best.
But there were one or two, there were some areas in which they found that I had particular adaptability and competence, and so I am helping. For example, right now, I started off being the attorney for the homeowners who would be displaced by the Berbice River Bridge. And when the people came to me, I told them they were offering me $100,000 each, Guyana dollar, or more to do their matter. I said, no, I don't want a cent from you. I'm going to the government, I will represent you. And in the end, I was able to get, with the help of the government, I think President Jagdeo behaved very magnanimously in this particular matter, in acquiescing and agreeing with the demands and the representation I made. So there was a good package for the people in the end, but then I told him, I said, the people don't want to move from this land. They were born there. So if I am representing the people, for them to move, you have to pay for them. And so the government has decided to pay a fee for each of the homeowners whose contract I got them to sign up, and up to last week I was there with the people. So this was a case where I gladly took the government's contract, and there is another contract that I worked with the IDB that was put aside to benefit from, I think, 16 to 20 million US dollars to have an alternative dump site in Eccles, a place called Hagenbosch. And so this is a massive project for the recycling of waste and destruction of waste. And so I worked with that project with the IDB, but it's a Government of Guyana project. And I think from what the IDB told me, I have done a good policy framework and legal framework document for them on that project. So yes, I am not opposed to working with the government, and I am not asking the government for work necessarily. But if they felt that I am competent and it's not giving me a favor, then I would do work, even in legislative work.
Someone told me that Mr. Moses Nagamoto, the stalwart of the PPP, was expected to be, this is before the election, to be made a vice president of Guyana with a portfolio of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Is this the case? Was that discussed at any level? And why are you, disappointed if that wasn't offered?
Well, remember, after I had gone to, when Mr. Jagdeo was named president in 1999, I keep going back and say there was expectation. Remember, we had a party congress in 1998. At that congress, the expectation was so high among members of the party that an overwhelming majority of them supported me. I almost got the top votes. Mrs. Jagan came number 1, I came number 2. In the same time that plans were in place to make Jagdeo succeed Mrs. Jagan. So I was overseas when all of that happened. But as soon as I heard the news that Bar Jagdeo had assumed the office of president, I immediately at a meeting in New York said, I'm endorsing this president. I'm supporting him. Mrs. Jagan had said she was demitting office because of health reasons. I said, no, I'm overseas. I'm demitting, I'm going to support him. When I came back home, I went to a press conference. President Jagdeo and I shared the press conference. And I told the nation that President Jagdeo had my support my full support. It was after that meeting that Mrs. Jagan came with me and Jack Dale and said, you'll have to make Moses vice president. Comrades are asking a lot of questions throughout the country. What is the role of Moses? They've been asking questions while Dr. Jagan was alive, after he died, after Jack Dale took over as president. So there was expectation and there was speculation in the press. But whenever this issue, remember, I face matters of principle. Someone, when we were discussing that I should come back to the campaign of the party, to the platform of the party, and suggestions were being made, I will always say, I do not want to put anything on the table. We will face one issue at a time. We went into the election. I became a candidate of the party. I went on the platform, and I deliver as I was required to. So I was not looking for vice president. I was not looking for minister walk. You know, this is not a roulette. This is not like, you know, you're playing a game, a Monopoly, and you put a bet and you expect something in return. And sometimes you strike it bonanza. I was not looking for a vice presidential bonanza. I was not looking for a ministerial lottery. You know, I am a soldier. I do my duty.
But it must be very hurtful to see a new soldier, ordinary soldiers coming and take over the work of a general.
Well, I feel that if I stayed in this attorney's job, say, for 2 years more, I probably will become a judge. And if I am gifted with long life, before I'm finished with my legal career, I probably could become the chancellor of the judiciary. If I were in the police force, I suppose by now I would have been commissioner of police or chief of staff of the army. So people do set their standards. And they're saying for every calling in life, there is an expectation that you could go and reach the top. So why is Moses Nagamutu not at the top? Monkey bitey? Dog bitey? Well, that is what people are talking. But as a responsible person, I cannot stoop down to the level of trying to create an issue every time I am bypassed. Sure, I am concerned, and I watched it, I said, gosh, these are comrades I struggled with, man. These are the people who saw when I was being beaten. These are the people who saw when I was in jail. These are the people who saw my sacrifices. What is it that I have done that allowed them to put me into the wilderness? So, fine, as a human being, I am disappointed, but I'm not going to allow that disappointment to cloud my, my commitment to my country. I'm still committed to this country. I believe I'm committed to this government because it has potential to do better. It has potential to do better.
For example?
Well, in the area of good governance, we want to be able to have a system of governance in this country where there's inclusion, where the opposition must not feel that they are necessarily left out of the processes of administering a region, helping to administer even the country from different perspectives, from different boards, different committees, by a process of consultation, by a process of inclusion, consultation, taking their advice, giving them space in the media, let them air their views.
But they have all of that.
They have that. But the system here of an election where winner takes all, it's a system that we need to examine very carefully, because Dr. Jagan in his lifetime was talking about a formula, political solution for Guyana's problem because of the problem of ethnicity, because of the problem of race, that it is holding back the country. We need to have national unity. And you can't have national unity if you have racial polarization. Either you have, as somebody said, you have a political solution or you will have dissolution. You don't want this state to dissolve. And we have seen how close we had came to the precipice of severe crisis in the country when crime was being used as a weapon of struggle. When Indians, Indo-Guyanese felt vulnerable because they felt that they were victims of attacks. Not that the crime, they were the only people being robbed. So I believe there's a lot of potential. There's commitment by this government and by the PPP that they will we will all explore the possibility of a political solution for Guyana's problems, a long-term solution. Up to recently, Mr. Jagan, Ashton Chase, and Donald Ramatar, or Ralph Ramkaran were at a function, and they were looking back at 1953. And Chase was saying, let us return to 1953, to the unity of our people, racial and political unity, because without unity we can't move forward. And I had said recently, 3 years ago I said it in an interview in Toronto, and it is now coming back onto the internet, where I said, unless you have that Indian prosperity cannot be guaranteed unless you address all concerns and even perception of Indian African insecurity. So that this government, as I see it, because of the program for the elections, we had said we are going to look at inclusivity, we will look at governance, and we will look at how to make our government more accountable to the people. In other words, this country cannot move forward faster, at a faster rate than we are moving at the moment, unless we have all the people supporting the programs of the day.
Mr. Nagamutu, we are inside your law office, inside of your chambers today. We're very happy, and we want to thank you very much for allowing us to be here. How would your practice here as an attorney at law, defending or taking cases to help people out of their probably possible charges and so on, how would that work out with your parliamentary position? You're a member of parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to defend criminals on one side, and then you're going to pass laws to curb crime? And tell us a little bit also about the current crime situation in the country, since you aspire to be the Minister of Home Affairs. What would you have done different to resolve the crime situation in Guyana?
Well, you asked so many questions.
Yes, in
let
one,
me tell
right,
you the
because we are
first.
coming to the end of our...
Right.
Yeah.
Well, very quickly. For me, being an attorney is not simply an exercise in defending criminals. It is to seek justice for all. Whoever comes to me as an attorney, I will ensure that they have a fair trial, that the processes of law are maintained. There's something called the rule of law here.
Due process.
As in all country, you are entitled to a fair hearing, to a fair trial. No one should be sent to the gallows without a trial. And therefore, essentially, that's the role of a lawyer. It does not conflict with my being a member of parliament, because part and parcel of the role of a parliamentarian is lawmaking. And because I'm a lawyer and I bring to bear my knowledge of the law, I can help to improve what we have, to reform and refine. And if they can't work, we scrap it and bring a new law. So being a lawyer, it helps the parliamentary process, particularly the process dealing with legislative work. The other side of it is, remember, I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee on Constitutional Reform. Our Constitution has to be constantly being refined to suit the national peculiarities and developments of the country. So I bring to bear in the Parliament my experience as someone who worked on the reforming the Constitution. And so that helps the country. If you have someone looking at the weaknesses, and I said before, your governance is tested to the extent that you address the weaknesses of the system. Now, sure, after the jailbreak, after the wave of heinous criminal activities, after the jailbreak of 2002, we have had a greater pressure from the society, what is called, I choose to call that a law. It's called public policy, where people tell you what to do. And that's why I went out in the campaign and I said those who live by the sword must die by the sword. That I subscribe to the rule of law in Guyana. But those who chose the path of the gun by which they will live, they will die by the gun. So there is a cognizance on my part of what society is saying, that you have to be tough on criminals. You have to be condign and uncompromising. And you have to take the fight to criminals. Because any criminal who points a gun at a policeman, I'm saying so as a lawyer, should not be a criminal pointing that gun if I were the policeman with the gun. You use the necessary force in keeping with the situation. So if I were Home Affairs Minister, I would probably be looking at what people are saying should be the solution. That is, an uncompromising fight against criminals. If they're caught, you put them to trial. You make sure that they have expeditious trial and that the system of justice works. There are other areas of criminal behavior in the society that cannot simply be dealt with by eliminating the criminals. You have to also look, that's where I become, as a politician, you look at how much jobs are being created, how many opportunities are being created, so that you don't solve crimes by eliminating criminal alone. That's one way that you have to fight the criminals, but you have to create opportunities to eliminate areas that breed these criminal activities.
It's a comprehensive approach.
So it's a total approach, and if you have a global approach, you're not going to be saying one person is superior than the other. It is not the personalities here. I want this to be clear. It's not the personality. It's the approach that you take to dealing with issues in the country.
Well, Mr. Nagamutu, I want to thank you once again on behalf of ITV, our camera crew here today. We want to thank you very much for this opportunity to be in your office.
Thank you very much, and I want to also wish all viewers happy holidays. I know we have just finished the Ramadan and the Diwali period, and soon we will have Christmas. All peace, goodwill, and love to you for the holidays.
This is Dr. Rudy Jadoopat reporting for ITV Vision of Asia, inside Guyana, inside Mr. Moses Nagamutu's office, inside Guyana. Thank you for watching.